So just recently, we saw the release of the first 2 episodes of the Marvel TV series Daredevil Born Again, which serves as a sequel to the classic Netflix series Daredevil, but this time with more integration into the wider MCU. Been a fair while since I watched or reviewed any Marvel TV shows whatsoever, honestly. I've done some films here and there, but I really felt like it was getting way oversaturated for my taste, and I was getting burned out. I still watched the movies when they'd come out, but the feeling just wasn't the same for me as it had been during that peak era. That being said though, when the trailer for this show dropped, I was massively hyped. I really do enjoy a grittier and darker take on superheroes, and Daredevil hits all those notes perfectly. Or at least I remember it being like that back in the day. I haven't really rewatched it or anything of the sort. I'm also very much over cosmic threats and power scale creeping up more and more, so to take things back to a more human type storyline is something that draws me in. I wasn't anticipating them doing a double episode drop, nor do I think that they'd be both monster sized. Especially episode 1, which goes for about an hour. So yeah, I guess we'll be starting off with that one, and there's no time like the present, so let's jump in. To me, this first scene is a damn masterpiece. You spend 5 minutes of happiness with the original trio. Matt and Karen are chilling at a retirement party for a cop named Cherry, whilst Foggy's trying to chat up another lawyer that they all know. It gets you back into being familiar with the characters, and puts you in this warm place, I suppose you could say. Really sets you up for that feeling of betrayal and grief and shock. All of the above. Because up next, Foggy gets a call from somebody he's been hiding in his apartment, telling him that somebody's downstairs trying to get in. Hearing this, Matt suits up as Daredevil to head there and stop the criminal, who's quickly revealed to be Bullseye when he nails a fly on the wall with a paperclip. So I know that this dude has some weird affinity for aiming perfectly, but I can't remember, does he actually have any powers beyond that? Some of the shit he throws in the fight sequence feels like it shouldn't actually be killing anybody. Not the knives or bullets, but other items, I guess. Some of these things that he uses, I feel like you'd need super strength to be able to get to kill someone. Oh well, it's Marvel. Also, it's quickly made very clear that this is an elaborate trap that's playing out on screen, and the real target is actually Foggy. Also, the music throughout this whole opening section is just so good, especially when Matt leaves the bar, suits up as Daredevil, and lands on the fire escape. Oh, yes. Matt overhears Benny, the guy hiding in the apartment, calling Foggy back and telling him that he's sorry, and that Bullseye forced him to tell him where he was. We cut over to Bullseye lining him up, and Daredevil rushes to the scene. Even then though, I feel like I wasn't really expecting that Foggy was going to get shot. I thought that Matt would swoop in and save him, or make Bullseye miss his shot and start fighting. So it was a massive shock to me when he actually got hit, but even then, I was in denial for a lot of this scene. As for the battle itself, pretty cool overall, really high intensity and whatnot, although I will admit, I did find it hard to take it seriously when the guy managed to do trick shot knockouts on people using pool balls, but wielding them as if they were rubber bouncy balls. The one where it ricochets all over the room and then clocks her in the face. That was dumb, and it made me laugh, and I don't think you should be laughing in this scene. Also, how many knives does this guy have? Times it felt like a video game where you have hundreds or thousands of throwing knives in your infantry. He just kept going, spamming them, pulling them out of nowhere. Regardless, I got so wrapped up with the battle that I just assumed Foggy would get the help he needs. I think it was only on the staircase where Matt hones in to check on him that I started to doubt. The last part of their fight on the roof was pretty gnarly, then Foggy straight up dies, and I don't know, it was a numb feeling. I couldn't quite compute they just killed off one of the lead characters, like that in the first 5 minutes. Really love the moment where Matt snaps as well, where he hears Foggy die, and he screams at Bullseye asking him why he did what he did. Then when he laughs in his face, it isn't this big dramatic beatdown where he kills him or anything of the sort, he just drops him off the roof, kasplat. I also really love the touch they added with Karen freaking out. Not only because Foggy has just died in her arms, but because a body thudded onto the ground behind her, and she's terrified that it's going to be Matt dead as well. Just such great acting from literally everybody in this scene. Holy shit. Then Matt removes his helmet and breaks down on the roof of the building, where he's found by the retiring cop. Man, what a scene. What a scene. It came out of nowhere, it was epic and intense, great music, great emotion, huge twists, and it leaves you shell-shocked for the time skip, which comes right after the opening credits. Because yeah, that was just the cold open. I've already seen some chatter talking about how Foggy's death must have been faked, or he could somehow still be alive or come back. But I really think that would cheapen everything, wouldn't it? It would cheapen the scene and cheapen his death. Let's be real here. It's very clear that Foggy and his death is going to hang over the narrative of the show going forward. I doubt it ever really goes away. It's going to be an important factor in Matt's life going forward, and inform the way he behaves as Daredevil. To go back on that though, it would be lame and reductive. It wouldn't feel like when all those characters returned during Endgame. It would be like if Gamora or Black Widow had returned from their Soul Stone deaths. It wouldn't feel right. So as much as I loved their friendship and banter and everything, I think it's for the best that he stays perma-dead. So we cut back in with Matt a year later, and honestly in that brief snippet we see of him in his apartment, he's not looking so good. We also learn there's a big election for mayor of the city coming up, which is where we cut over to the big man, Kingpin, Wilson Fisk. He's eating a pretty depressing breakfast. I mean, what the hell is that thing? Like an egg white omelette or something? And a single piece of asparagus? Nah, couldn't be me. We also checked in with Mrs. Fisk. Vanessa Fisk seems to have taken over the operations of their organised crime empire and is currently settling a dispute between two rival gangs. Unlike Wilson, she seems to operate as the silk glove rather than the iron gauntlet. She has strength and authority, but she doesn't seem like she's on the verge of snapping and beating someone to death at any second. Bit of an improvement from the big man, I think. If you're an employee, that is. Fisk makes his entrance and has a private meeting with Vanessa, and it's clear that not all is well in their marriage. Wilson seems to be like a little beaten dog in this scene, almost like he's trying to justify himself and how he had to leave her behind to go and heal from his trauma, getting scolded like a child. Meanwhile, Vanessa clearly resents being left behind, and also the fact that when he walks into a room, all of the crime families who have previously been answering to her, and who are loyal and respect her because of her aptitude for making them money, simply snap to attention and leave. That in the end, they still fear Fisk more than they respect and follow her. He's still the Kingpin. But yeah, it looks like the marriage is on the rocks, and he is in the doghouse. I feel like it's pretty obvious though, they're going to work it out. I mean, you can see in her facial expressions, in her eyes, she does still love this guy, for whatever reason. Also, based on this, I feel like she's going to be the more active villain for Daredevil to contend with. She leads the criminal enterprise now, it seems. Fisk wants to run for mayor, and thus he can't be involved in any of that. He can be the establishment to come after Matt, to come after vigilantes, but she can be the criminal side of things. Because I think it would be weird to see Fisk fall back into the crime lord side when they could take him in a more interesting direction. Plus, it gives her something cool to do as well. After this, we get a little snippet of the BB report, which recurs over the course of these first 2 episodes, and probably will for the whole season, where regular people recount their experiences in New York City, and what they think of issues like crime, Daredevil, etc. This segment makes it seem like New York is in pretty rough shape overall, a bit of a crime wave, and that Daredevil's presence is well and truly missed. We then briefly check in with Matt, who's meeting with his new legal partner, Kirsten McDuffie, the woman that Foggy was chatting up at the bar. Seems that in the year since the murder, their old firm closed, and Matt has opened a new one with her, Murdoch and McDuffie. Man, if that isn't just another kick in the teeth. It really cements that he's well and truly gone. Rather depressing, but it was nice to see that his conversation with this woman seems to have inspired her to follow in his footsteps, so to speak. Basically, this scene is just her checking in with him before the sentencing hearing the next day, and the big takeaway is that it seems that he and Karen are not on speaking terms, which is followed up on later on in the hearing. The hearing itself is pretty stock standard. If you've seen a legal drama, you've seen this scene before. You get the emotional scene of Matt giving his statement about how there's no justice in this, and that he'll never get to speak to his friend again. Then Bullseye gets sentenced to life in prison, and Matt seems to react pretty strongly to that. Did he want him to get the death penalty or something? Is that something that could have been on the table? Does New York City do death sentences? The next scene after this is pretty sad, really. He and Karen talk, and it's clear that she is not able to continue their friendship. After Foggy's death, it seems that Matt briefly pulled away in his own grief, which left her feeling alone, and I think fractured their bond. It's probably not forever, but let's be real, it's for the foreseeable future. At least this season, I'd say. She's moved to San Francisco, and seems to have been dodging his calls and attempts to contact her. She doesn't want to talk much further with him about their friendship, and doesn't want to go for coffee. Or rather, she refuses to, as he tells her that he knows she's lying about wanting to go. On top of that, it seems rather clear she highly disapproves of him hanging up the spandex and moving away from being a vigilante. I get it, it does feel like he's somewhat given up, that he blames himself for not saving Foggy and for getting him dragged into the mess with Bullseye. By stepping away, he's taken away a layer of protection for the people that used to depend on him. From all that, it seems rather clear the majority of her distance comes from A, his emotional distance in the aftermath of the murder that made her feel alone and fractured their friendship, and B, the fact that she thinks he could be doing more and that he should still be Daredevil. That he's no longer being the Matt that she and Foggy knew. Later on, as Matt angrily chops up ingredients for his dinner, he hears a voice. Fisk's voice, as he learns that he's announced his candidacy to become the mayor of New York City. This in turn makes Matt feel like absolute shit, because of course it does. He just got some measure of closure on the death of his best friend, with his murderer and longtime enemy finally getting put behind bars forever. Only for another old enemy to come out of the woodwork and start to make his own moves, but in a way that Matt can't actually stop. Fully legal. Plus his other friend wants little to do with him. Just wall-to-wall trauma this episode, my god, it's so bleak. We have a brief look at Fisk's campaign war room, where it seems that his unconventional nature is earning him popularity amongst voters, who clearly want change and think he could bring some. Yeah, this analogue feels very on the nose, doesn't it? I mean, hell, later on we see his fans wearing hats with his slogan on them. Fisk can fix it. At the same time, we meet a young man named Daniel who managed to get 2,000 signatures for Fisk to get him into the running and who is willing to work dirt cheap. This guy feels primed to become a sort of right-hand man type figure for Fisk going forward. Either that or he is eventually going to misstep and his head is going to be smashed like a grape. It seems that in the Marvel world, just like the real world, controversy drums up interest. Because when Matt gets sent out by his partner to meet up with a potential client, on the street it's all anybody talks about, good or bad. Everybody is finding Fisk interesting, which as we know, will get his foot in the door. At a coffee shop, he meets up with who he thinks is a potential client, only to discover that she thinks he's a potential therapy client. It seems that they've been set up by their mutual friend Kirsten on a blind date. At first, his meeting with Heather's a bit rocky, but he turns on the charm, and eventually it all seems to go well. This is actually a really nice palate cleanser of a scene, hopeful and sweet, and the scene that follows with him and Kirsten bantering about the setup is the same sort of vibe. It's like he's healing with new friends, new relationships. It was much needed because pretty much every scene of this show after Foggy died has been very bleak, and I think that would have eventually become too much, but this has cut right through it and changed the tone. It doesn't last very long though, as Happy Matt fades away when he has to talk to Cherry, who gives him word from cops that are split 50-50 in regards to Fisk. Some are devoted, and some hate him, whilst also telling him on the surface, everything about Fisk seems legitimate. There's no dark underbelly to all of this, and to Fisk's money and campaign. Now, of course, we all know that that's a load of bullshit, and his wife is not an investor but a crime lord who simply managed to legitimize his holdings. But Matt, he's still too cynical and bitter to bother digging much deeper into it. You can tell he obviously wants to, although at this point, he's doing what he said Karen was doing, lying to himself. Deep down, he clearly wants to keep being Daredevil and fighting the good fight and investigating, but at the same time, he isn't emotionally ready for that step. However, we can see that despite his bluster, despite his denials, he still feels like he has to do something. Otherwise, why would he go to Fisk? Why would he sit down with him at that random diner? Yeah, this scene was great. Palpable tension and top-tier chemistry between your leads. A scene where it feels like both of these characters are somewhat in denial about their true nature. Matt, in that he constantly reaffirms to Fisk that he's not Daredevil anymore, and he doesn't intend to resume his vigilante lifestyle, whilst Fisk tries to make it clear that the Kingpin's dead and buried, that he's a new man with new values who will not be the man he was before. Both of them have a big asterisk next to their name though. It's such a good scene, and honestly part of me thought the episode should end here, that Fisk was gonna somewhat get the upper hand on Matt, comparing their violent natures, bringing up how Matt tried to kill Bullseye and that he likely liked how it felt to fight brutally with no quarter given, and then finishing him by telling him he's gonna win the election, and that vigilantes going forward will not be tolerated. So Fisk would bring all of that up, rub his face in it, and Matt would only smile and laugh. A weak response, because Fisk is clearly on the money, and then the credits would roll, but then they didn't. We had more. Matt goes off on his date with Heather, and along the way, he learns that Fisk actually won the election in what seems to be a massive victory over the other major candidates. He got 53% of the vote, I'm pretty sure. That is immense for the dark horse candidate who only announced his run, I think, a day or two before? It's wild how popular he got so quickly. We then finish on two contrasting love scenes. The first with Fisk and Vanessa, where he reveals that he knows that she has a lover named Adam, and she gets him to promise not to kill him, despite him saying he's not that man anymore. This scene has me very curious. Has he actually changed? Is this all an act, all BS? Is he gonna snap? Will she snap? There are so many directions they could go here. Hell, I think Fisk's potential arc is the one to watch this season, even more than Matt's. Speaking of which, he gets a smooch right there at the end to end things on a happy note, but once again he walks away from being a vigilante. Damn. This is certainly one way to start a show. Despite it being very low in action for a superhero show, I kind of liked that. They went really hard really early, and then the rest of the episode is there to be a bit of a slow build and a recovery, to flesh out characters and start to signpost where the show's going to go, what it's going to be. Has me hyped for Marvel like I haven't been in ages. Let's have more of this, please. And so yeah, that's the end of the episode, and these have all been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the first episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.